which I think it's particularly helpful to see some pictures to understand what's really going on. So it's the last three words of Tzadi Gimel Amud Aleph. It says, Amr Rav Chisda. If we have Gidur Chamisha, Mechitza Chamisha, if dividing two, let's say, courtyards, is a combination. You have Gidud, you have cliff, the ground itself goes at an elevation for 5 Tvachim, plus top of that is built a wall of 5 Tvachim. Ein mitzdarfin, do not combine. Actually, okulo begidud, okulo b'mechitza. Unless the whole thing is comprised of either gidud, a cliff, or wall. Can't combine the two together. So what does that mean? It means if you have, let's go to the picture, say 2 courtyards. So we see how, look at the stairs, go up the stairs. They're at different heights. So the gidud, the cliff, the ground itself is 5 plus 5 from the wall. If Chisda is saying these 2 domains are judged as 1, which means they wouldn't have the option of making their own Eruvin if they want to carry in Shabbos. They would have to make an Eruv with each other. It's one big rishus in halacha. The Gemara asks, Meisvei, right? Says in the Brisa, the opposite. It says, if okay, so first it says, let's say the whole thing is gidud. You have a cliff that's 10 tvachim. Okay, so that's fine. But then it says, if you have Chisda's case, it's half gidud, half mechitza. What does the Brisa say? Ma'arvin shnayim ve'in ma'arvin echad. They would make their own separate Eruvin. In other words, it is a good mechitza, the opposite of what Rav Chisda said. It says they can't join together. Why? Because there's no opening here. It's not like there's a window or a door in the middle. That could be a basis to join together. It's just straight mechitza going all the way across. So there's the problem. The Brisa says the opposite of Rav Chisda. But let's first see the rest of the Brisa. See the safe of the end part. It says then, Pachos Mikan, it's less than 10, well then you don't have a halachic partition dividing these courtyards, and so Ma'arvin Echad, Ve'in Ma'arvin Shnayim, the option would be to make one big Eruv together. Fine. So, again, the beginning of the Brisa seems to directly contradict Rav Chisda. It says you could combine. The Gemara answers, Amr changed it to Rava. Amr Rava, really, Moder Rav Chisda b'tachtona. Chisda agrees that from the perspective of the lower courtyard that we do have a valid mechitza here. He agrees the lower one makes its own Eruv. Why? Hol v'roa pnei asara, because it sees the whole surface face of 10. So since it could see the 10 going up clearly, Chisda agrees that for the lower courtyard this is a valid mechitza. He was just saying that it's not valid for the upper courtyard who can only see the wall here. They can't really see from their courtyard the whole thing. It's not nicker, it's not discernible. So for them it's not good. Gemara points out, okay, but that only then half explains the Brisa. Question is, if so, fine, you've explained why tachtona ta'arif shnayim v'lo ta'arif echad. Why, okay, the lower one, Rav Chisda agrees, makes its own Eruv, because from its perspective it's a valid mechitza. However, why does the Brisa say the upper one also makes its own Eruv? Since Rav Chisda is saying that this doesn't count as a mechitza from the perspective of the upper courtyard, so what are we dealing with then? This courtyard is open to this courtyard. So what should be the halacha? Lo ta'arv lo echad v'lo shnayim. Should be totally stuck. It shouldn't be able to make its own Eruv for sure, because it's open to the other one. Nor does it have the option of joining with the lower courtyard, because we're saying that the lower courtyard is sealed off of the upper one. The lower courtyard says, I have nothing to do with you. There's not even an opening from you to me, so I can't help you, Mr. Upper Courtyard. I can't join with your Eruv. So the Brisa should have said that the upper courtyard is stuck. They have no way to make carrying permitted in their space. To which the Gemara answers, Amar Rabba bar Ula, Kegon shahaisa Elyona migufefes ad eser amos. He further modifies the case. He says that really we have full 10 tefach height walls coming at the sides, migufefes, at the sides there, and that continues until eser amos, meaning the opening in between is within 10 amos, like so. Saying really, of course, we have proper walls of 10 tefachim at the sides, just not all the way down the middle. But since this opening is less than 10 amos wide, the fact that you have that opening there doesn't undermine the partition. We have a wonderful partition, really, from both courtyards' perspective. This is a perfectly fine partition. It happens to be there's an opening here, but since this is, again, within a width of 10 amos, that's all it is. It's just, an entrance. That's fine. The fact that you have an entrance in a partition doesn't undermine that as a halachic partition. So that's why they each make their own eruv. But the Gemara asks, Ihachi, if that's the case here, Emes Seifa, now let's try to read the Seifa according to this. What did the Seifa say? That, remember, Pachos Mikan, if it is less than this. So what does it mean if it is less than this according to this new reading of the case? It has to be referring to this part. We're not changing this. We're saying that we have valid mechitzas here. The point instead, we're talking about this part, where you would have to combine with the Gidut part, and it's saying you have less than 10 here. The problem is, so what does the Brisa say? In that case, where there's less than 10, Marvin Echad ve'Marvin Shnayim, then the two courtyards only have the option of joining together. Well, they can't make their own Eruvin in that case. But what are you talking about? Why should it matter at all? Who cares if this is a little shorter? You don't have 10 here. If you have 10 here and here, once again, it's a wall. Okay, a little opening here. The fact that this is shorter should be totally irrelevant. And regardless, each courtyard, the same halacha should apply. Each courtyard should be able to make its own eruv. So what's going on here? So Amar Rabba Brei de Rava. He further refines the case. He says, what's the case here? Kagon shenifratza tachtona b'milo al Yona. Case is that really the lower courtyard is not benefiting from these things. Why? This is the Otzar Chacham I'm using here. Let's check it out. Consider purchasing that, an excellent resource, as you can see. The Gemara is saying that we have a situation where the upper courtyard is not just higher, but it's also wider. So those gifufis we were talking about, the side walls of 10, only enclose the upper courtyard, not the lower, more narrow one. From the lower, more narrow courtyard's point of view, it's just completely open to the upper one. And therefore, the lower courtyard's only hope is this part. If that's a full 10, the Raisa says, okay, fine. Then relying on that, the lower courtyard can make its own eruv. But if this is less than 10, then the lower courtyard has a problem. Now, it's not going to be able to make its own eruv. It's going to have to join with the upper courtyard. But we're not done yet because, okay, that explains the lower courtyard, but Yachi, so fine, Tachtona Chater P'Chelatiyar, we just explained why the lower courtyard does depend on the upper courtyard in this case, because from its perspective, there's no partition. But Elyona, why should that be true of the upper one? The upper one, Ibai Trei Tarav, Ibai Chatarav. The status for the upper one shouldn't change. It's like a classic Chatzar Gedola, Chatzar Katana situation. That's, remember, we say from the larger courtyard's perspective, it's enclosed with proper partitions of 10. Okay, there's an opening. As long as this is within 10 amos, doesn't matter there's an opening there. So why shouldn't the upper courtyard still have the option of making its own Eruv? To which the Gemara says, Inachinami, you're right. It's true. The upper courtyard still has the option of making its own Eruv. When it says that no, it can't make its own Eruv, it has to rely on the other courtyard. When it can't make its own, what's it? Atachtona. We're talking specifically about the lower courtyard, that again, since from its perspective, these walls here don't help the lower courtyard, because that's not enclosing them. And the safest time where this part is less than 10, therefore, from the lower courtyard's point of view, it's one with the upper courtyard, and therefore, the lower courtyard's only hope of being able to carry is to join an Eruv with the upper courtyard.